I saw the amount of time and effort she put in, the amount of love she had for her students, how she tried to reach each of them in different ways. But you know what I'm worried about is with the Common Core and the way that teachers are being put pressure under, the amount of pressure they're under, and the way the system is holding them back. I worry about the next generation of teachers. Are we going to get our best and brightest to become teachers? I'm worried the answer to that is no. That is a critical thing we need to be sure we're talking about as part of these reforms.
And
when you create choice, and you create choice without taking public funds to do it, and you work with the public schools in partnership to make sure that you are all together offering choices and helping kids. I've raised 4 kids. Not a single one of them learns the same as the other one does, or is interested in the same thing as the other one is, or has the same strengths as the other one does. And to create choices without taking public funds and supporting the public school system and getting stronger and getting the kind of funding it needs and creating early childhood education opportunities is something that we all need to come together on. And the federal government has a critical role to play there that it is not playing at the moment.
okay, for both candidates, what does comprehensive immigration reform mean to you, and how do you plan to help ensure it passes in Congress in your House?
So comprehensive immigration reform means that we create a pathway to citizenship for those who are here, who are undocumented, and who have played by the rules and paid their taxes, and we bring them out of the shadows and we make sure that they have the ability to be fully contributing, fully participating American citizens over time. We need to, there should be a pathway to citizenship. It should be a pathway that doesn't allow them to jump in front of those who have waited their turn, but at the same time, a pathway that will get them to citizenship, particularly those who have, as I said, played by the rules and not committed crimes and have paid their taxes. Now, we also need to make sure that the president's immigration reforms with DACA and DAPA, which Lee Zeldin, by the way, because he didn't like those, and those involved minor children who were brought here having no idea what the rules were, having no ideas what the laws were brought here as children, allowing them to be able to stay here and contribute and be part of our American economy and America's future. Lee Zeldin didn't like that. He voted to shut down Homeland Security because of it. Talk about an overreaction. But to me, I'll say some more in rebuttal.
And
I think that we entirely agree on this one, and I think we are a region that lives the reality of this on a daily basis, and that reform has to happen, and it has to happen right away. The other part of that too is making sure that the temporary visa program is reinvigorated. Our agricultural industry out here is absolutely dependent on it. Over 50% of the laborers that are supporting our agricultural industry today do not have any kind of visa status, let alone citizen status. And that affects our economy here. It affects the livelihood of small businesses out here. It is something that needs to happen and needs to happen immediately. We also have to do our part with refugees around the world today. We cannot close our borders and our doors to people who are refugees, who are fleeing areas of conflict, areas where their human rights are taken away from them.
One other thing we need to do when it comes to immigration reform is actually use it to the advantage of our economy and our jobs. We have not, our system is so backwards that we actually get rid of people who come here and have maybe got an engineering degree, a science degree, and want to stay here and create jobs here and start a company here. And right now, well, except for a few occasions, they're sent back to their countries where they came from. I believe that if folks come here, are educated in American colleges with a science degree, engineering degree, etc., we should staple a green card onto their diploma as long as they're willing to start a company here and create jobs here.
And all of that is part of supporting our education system here too. Universities on all levels gain from letting foreign students in and enhancing our education system here. And yes, then allowing them to support businesses here as well. And that is part of the immigration reform that, again, I think we both agree that it should be as comprehensive, as fundamental. And people talk about, school taxes and things like that. We have large number of families who want to be able to pay into their school taxes, and we're not allowing them to do that. Hampton Bays is a perfect example of that.
Next question. What job creation skills can you bring to the 1st Congressional District if you're elected?
Well, it's a lot of what I've done over the last few years, helping to start and grow companies. One of the companies that I started a couple years ago was just named Inc. Magazine's list of one of the fastest growing companies in the country. We need more entrepreneurs, we need more small business people, and that's what I've worked to do. When I saw that we had great research assets here on Long Island, but weren't doing a great job of creating jobs out of that, I put together the Long Island Emerging Technologies Fund to help launch companies coming out of the research labs. And we've helped launch now 10 companies in the last 3 years coming out of our research labs, Brookhaven National Lab, Cold Spring Harbor, et cetera. When I saw that what our military was doing with veterans was giving them, when the military service members were about to leave the military, they were giving them a class on how to write a resume. Myself and some others said we should be exposing these folks to the opportunity to create small businesses. Veterans and active duty service members who are leaving are some of our most technically trained, hardworking, disciplined, all the things that come with being in the military, and yet we don't give them access to being able to start their own small business. And so I started Patriot Boot Camp, which is a national not-for-profit, to help train those folks in how to start their own small businesses.
It's a critical issue, particularly in this district. It's a national issue, but in this district, and I think this district is a little bit different than the way Dave describes it. This is a district that is a service economy. This is a district that is a healthcare economy. This is a district that is an agricultural economy, and it's a small business economy. This is a district where small businesses need to know that there are tax abatements that will help them, that there is access to critical funding and loans from banks and other institutions. This is a district that needs to know that it has labor and both educated and vocationally educated labor there, and able to work its businesses and able to afford to live here. That's why we did the overlay district and the economic development plan in the Flanders Riverside area to make sure that there were jobs both in retail, in healthcare, and where there would also be the access to affordable living. That's why we did the work that we did here in Hampton Bays. And that's why we created the Clean Water Center.
Small business is the heart of Long Island. We are one of the largest small business areas in the country. That's what I've done, is start small businesses, and that's why it takes someone who understands how to get companies started and small businesses started to do something like bring the farmers together and figure out how we can create a way for more farmers to get started. It takes someone with that background to have, people. We've been having great research at the laboratories for a long time, but it took someone with a background in helping to launch small businesses to partner with them to help launch new companies so that they'll become hopefully the job creating locations of the future.
I think it takes someone who's actually created jobs while in government and has understood how you work with government agencies and how you work with constituents to create an economy and support an economy that needs government to work for it and all that government can do for it. And that's what I did as town supervisor. I worked with all the federal agencies, I worked with state government, I worked with county government, and I worked with the local governments. And that is how we got the Clean Water Center up and running. That is how we supported the agricultural industry. That's how we got the project done in Riverside, Flanders. That is the kind of know-how in government that we need in Congress.
Next question. What do you believe are the most challenging issues for constituents on Eastern Long Island, and can you offer any solutions?
Well, I think the bottom line is we live in a great place to live, but it's an expensive place to live, and I think we need to make sure that we have an economy that is growing jobs of the future. I mean, as I said before, we are losing our young people. We pay a lot in school taxes, and so many times kids are moving away. My own family, my sister now lives elsewhere. As I said before, so many families have been broken apart by kids finding jobs elsewhere, finding better housing elsewhere, and what does that mean? It means the grandkids are elsewhere, and they're not able to stay together in ways that we have in the past. So I think growing our economy, making sure we have the right kind of housing is critically important for our region. And we don't have a member of Congress right now who's focused on that at all. Nor do we have a member of Congress who has any background in that at all. And I believe that's why we can beat Lee Zeldin, and I believe that's why we must beat Lee Zeldin.
I think making sure that Long Island is a place where the aging community can age in place, where the aging community has access to health care, where transportation and mass transportation works, where veterans can find jobs and live where we have the largest veteran population in Suffolk County in the state of New York, where there is access to transportation and jobs, where the environment is actually working for us rather than against us, and where government is putting programs in place the way we did in the town of Southampton to protect our environment and to create jobs as we're doing that, and where we support the healthcare industry, we support the service economy, and we make sure that taxes are kept down, and where we make sure that people and kids have access to affordable education that then lead to jobs that are part of our economy and our Long Island economy. And there are plenty of programs that are nascent programs out there, but they need a member of Congress that understands them and will fight for them and keep growing them.
The other thing I would add is we need to make sure that we're focusing on protecting what makes Long Island special, and that is our natural environment. And that's why I am proud to have the support of the Environmental Voters Forum. I am proud to be a leader when it comes to open space preservation, water quality protection, renewable energy, etc. My opponent was seen as someone who supported overdevelopment, who supported sand mining in the Pine Barrens, and for that reason the Environmental Voters Forum has chosen to endorse me, as has the entire East Hampton Town Board, all the Democrats in East Hampton, all the Democrats in Brookhaven, all the Democrats who served on the town board with Anna here in Southampton. I'm proud of my record. I believe the environment is critically important in addition to the economy.
All right, so one town board member that I worked with has supported you, and another. I have been supported by every level of government because of the environmental work that I got done, and have been recognized by the county executive and several others. I led the lawsuit to make sure that sand mining and illegal sand mining stopped, and we won that lawsuit. And we made sure that mulching was no longer done without being tested. And we got the governor's office to work with us on that. We created the Solarize Southampton program. We banned plastic bags. We preserved thousands of acres. I'm very proud of my environmental record.
Your next question. Due to, I assume this is real estate crash of 2008, there were a number of foreclosed houses on the market. Are you aware of the scams going on, which people lose life savings? What will you do to stop it?
So I think what they're talking about is when there's been all the mortgage fraud that occurred, and I'm going to assume that's what they're talking about with that question. The mortgage fraud that happened was unconscionable. We now have in place a Consumer Finance Protection Board that Elizabeth Warren has put in place, by the way, fighting tooth and nail against Republicans. That needs to be strengthened and enhanced. People need to understand that it matters who their member of Congress is when it comes to their basic consumer protections. The Republicans have stood time and time again with the mortgage industry, with those who, the kinds of folks who led us down an economic path that led us to the precipice of disaster. And we need to make sure we have Democrats in place who make sure that we stand up for consumer finance protections. And we also need to make sure that we have in place loan programs to allow people to get back on their feet, to be able to afford the down payments, they can get back on their feet and get back to their homes. That is, if we don't provide that,
Again, I think we entirely agree on that. I mean, and we saw it here, and we saw it extensively here. We tried to work with families through town hall that had been affected by foreclosure and steer them in the direction where they could get help. We also made sure that after the storms and where people were displaced and again couldn't pay their mortgages and whatnot, that we got FEMA and we got federal agencies here and insurance brokers here that would work with the families that had been displaced. And that was also a big part of our plan for the Flanders Riverside economic development, was to make sure that homes that were either blighted or in foreclosure and where families were looking for a path to be part of that very proactive program could opt into it. And I think the program has had some great success with that and making sure that we bring some light to light in that area that was the most affected area of the town through the foreclosure crisis.
Since I asked that question,
I'm sorry.
I was referring to the people who are taking advantage of people in the real estate market now, right now.
I can't,
That was his question. That was his question. That was just clarifying.
That's for clarification.
Okay, we'll take 30 seconds on that. Good enough? Okay, so bottom line is we need folks, the vigorous enforcement, the federal government through the Consumer Financial Protection Board needs to be looking at that issue. The Consumer Financial Protection Board is a first step. It needs its teeth to be strengthened. Why? Because it was so hard to get it in place. Elizabeth Warren did a tremendous job getting it in place, but we need to make sure that we strengthen protections, both to make sure mortgage fraud, real estate fraud, to your point, sir, as well as other kinds of consumer loans and those kinds of things.
And we need to make sure that people have access to legal protection here and legal counsel here, because that's one of the biggest problems that families have that are facing this foreclosure crisis, is that they do not have access to legal advice on this, and so they are unduly affected as a result of that. There's some very interesting programs that are run out of many of the universities today. I know Toro College is doing one right here on Long Island, and for anyone who needs to know about it, it is a no-cost foreclosure group that's working with families who need it. So I would suggest for anyone who's looking for that kind of protection and advice that it's there.
thank you. Next question. What is your position regarding pre-K education and preschool education and care for the disadvantaged in our communities?
So there is no greater investment we can make as a society, as a people, than in early education. I've obviously seen that with my own kids, and I know many of you have seen that as well. As I said before, we are strongest as a country when we take advantage of the God-given abilities of all of our people. That means making sure that those kids who do not have access to pre-K education or preschool get access to it. The number of words that a child who goes through nursery school hears by the time they get to kindergarten, compared to the amount of words that a child who does not go to nursery school or pre-K hears, is like 1,000 to 1. What a difference in the life of a child, what a difference in a start off in the education system if they have access to that. The federal government should do, New York City has now put in place universal pre-K. We have it in many places, but not all places here for sure, and we need to make sure that it's available everywhere. That is an investment that is worth taxpayer dollars.
We are the only developed, industrialized country in the world today that does not offer universal pre-K and early childhood education. That's a terrible reflection, I think, on where we have put our priorities as a country over the last several years. It is an absolute must. It is the great equalizer. And when we're talking about the gap in income opportunity and educational opportunity, in path out of poverty and path of not going to school and ending up in jail, it starts right there. It starts with access to early childhood education. It is also the greatest gender equalizer in the world. Women cannot start to make the same amount of money as men do because they are generally the ones who stay home with little kids until they get to the age where they can go to school. And so they are not able to grow their careers and reach income equality with men for that reason. So it is a great equalizer on all levels.
Rebuttal? Okay. This question is for Dave, and then Anna will give you a rebuttal to it. Dave, there was recently an article in Newsday that said while you were on the LIPA board, you were in charge of storm
Sandy, Superstorm Sandy.
preparedness before Hurricane Sandy, sorry, and resigned from LIPA only 2 days after Sandy hit. Is there something voters should be scared that Lee Zeldin will use against you in the general should you win the primary?
Sure. So I was a volunteer on the LIPA board starting about 7 years ago. They came to me, and Kevin Law, who was involved at the time, came to me and said, would you be part of this? And I said, you know, and I talked to other folks about it, and obviously LIPA is a very troubled institution. But when I looked at the board, there was no one there fighting for progressive values. There was no one there fighting for renewable energy. And so I said that I decided to volunteer there in order to push on the board for renewable energy. Because of the work that we did there, we now have the largest renewable energy plan in Long Island's history. Tens of thousands of additional homeowners now have the ability to get and are getting renewable energy powering their homes. Now, when it came to the storm, my term was up in September of that year, and I said that I was going to end my volunteer time there when that was over. I told them that in the summer, and I extended that till the end of October in order to see through that renewable energy plan. And I believe that, you know, at the end of the day, people care about the future and what people are going to do about protecting our environment, promoting renewable energy, and my work on the LIPA board was very much focused on that.
Anna?
As a LIPA board member, along with others, consecutive